I never thought a $60 massage would completely destroy my marriage and rebuild my entire life. But here I am, 3 years later, living a reality I couldn't have imagined. I'd been complaining about my back pain for months. You know how it is when you're constantly hunched over a computer at work. As she worked on the knots in my shoulders, we started talking. Nothing deep at first, just small talk about the weather, the music playing softly in the background. Here I was, 34 years old, married for 8 years, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd done anything purely because I wanted to. Then she said, "You know, tension in the shoulders often comes from carrying burdens that aren't really ours to carry." Everything was about my husband's schedule, his needs, his career, his friends. She kept saying I needed to take better care of myself, but honestly, I felt guilty spending money on something that seemed so luxurious. I told him about the massage, about the question Elena had asked, about how I'd been feeling. He looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "You're overthinking things," he said, barely looking up from his phone. "It's just a massage. When's the last time you did something just for yourself?" The first time someone had seen me as more than just a role I was playing. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when my sister practically dragged me to this wellness center downtown. I remembered that I loved painting, that I used to write poetry, that I'd always dreamed of traveling to Italy. These weren't just forgotten hobbies, they were pieces of my soul that I'd somehow left behind. And having conversations with strangers that felt more real than most of the interactions I'd had in years. Some people thought I'd lost my mind, throwing away a stable marriage for what they saw as a midlife crisis. But Elena understood. She'd seen this transformation happen before, she told me. Sometimes we need someone to remind us that we're allowed to take up space, to have needs, to want things. I called Elena from a cafe in Florence, crying again, but this time, from joy. "I can see myself," I told her. "For the first time in years, I can actually see myself." Here's what I tell them. That $60 massage didn't change my life. It reminded me that I had a life worth changing. It reminded me that I deserved to be seen, to be heard, to take up space in my own story. The massage therapist's name was Elena. She was probably in her late 40s, with these incredibly gentle hands and this calm energy that just made you feel safe. My marriage felt like a costume I'd been wearing for so long, I'd forgotten it was actually my skin. I still get massages, but now it's part of a life where I regularly check in with myself instead of waiting for someone else to notice I am drowning. I began saying no to social events that drained me. He accused me of being selfish, of throwing away everything we'd built together. And sometimes, the answer is so different from what you thought that it scares you. But that fear? That's just the sound of your authentic self knocking on the door, asking to finally come home. But I realized we hadn't built anything together. He'd built a life and I'd been a supporting character in it. I started taking walks by myself just to think. And with each small step toward authenticity, I felt this incredible mix of excitement and terror. My husband and I had become roommates, going through the motions of a life that looked good on paper but felt empty inside. But then she asked me a question that stopped me cold. This stranger had somehow seen right through me in a way my own husband never had. I'd been accepted into an art residency program in Tuscany, something I'd applied for on a whim after Elena encouraged me to pursue my painting again. When I told my husband, he was furious. "You can't just abandon your responsibilities," he said. "What about my career? What about our plans?" She handed me tissues and just let me cry. Didn't try to fix it or make it about her. She just held space for me. They had always been his plans. I'd just been along for the ride, nodding and agreeing and slowly disappearing. I couldn't answer. I literally couldn't think of a single thing. Elena must have sensed something shift in my energy, because she got quiet for a moment. I started crying. Right there on the massage table, tears just streaming down my face. When had I become someone who couldn't even remember what I enjoyed doing? I'd been so busy being the perfect wife, the perfect employee, the perfect daughter, that I'd completely lost myself. After the session, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just staring at myself in the rearview mirror. Who was this person? That night, I tried to talk to my husband about it, but it wasn't just a massage. It was the first time in years someone had paid attention to what I needed. I started going back every month. Elena and I would talk during the sessions, and slowly, I began to remember who I used to be. The more I reconnected with myself, the more I realized how far I'd drifted from the person I wanted to be. I started making small changes. I signed up for a painting class. The breaking point came 6 months later. But here's the thing. They were his plans. The conversation that followed was brutal. Years of resentment and unspoken truths came pouring out. I went to Italy. I spent 3 months painting, writing, walking through ancient streets. When I came back, I knew I couldn't go back to the old life. The divorce was messy and painful, but necessary. I'm remarried now, to someone who sees me as a whole person, not just a role to be filled. I have my own art studio. I travel. People ask me all the time if I regret it, if I think I made the right choice. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is ask yourself what you actually want. The massage was just the beginning. The real work was learning to live as myself again. And that work? It's the best investment I've ever made.